God created the heavens and the earth at the dawn of time. But have you ever paused to ask what was there before time itself began? Can the human mind even begin to grasp a reality where time had not yet come into being? Imagine this: no space, no stars, no motion, no form, no thought. Yet something existed, a presence vast, silent, and all-pervading that filled even the absence of existence. Long before the universe took shape, this presence was. Have any of us truly dared to explore this question? One so profound, so infinite, it resists any answer. Where does God come from? Religious traditions across cultures speak of an eternal God without beginning, without end. And still, despite its progress, science has only grazed the surface of this enigma. It tracks timelines and maps galaxies, but it cannot explain an origin that never began. If God was never created, if he emerged from nothing and no one, then why does he exist? Perhaps the reason no answer satisfies is because the question itself breaks the rules of human understanding. Perhaps God exists outside time, beyond the bounds of existence as we know it. Let us now step further into this mystery and explore the space where even beginnings dissolve. Are you prepared to investigate the true genesis of God, which is something that goes beyond the confines of what we believe we fully understand? If you are prepared to embark on this path, please comment 111. Together, let's discover the answers to the questions. Be sure to tighten your grip, for this is just the beginning of something far more significant, the beginning of God's existence. Who was God before the creation of the universe? Picture a line, perfect, infinite, stretching across the emptiness. Now close your eyes. Try to find where it begins. Can you? Your mind instinctively searches for an origin, a point of reference, something to anchor it in time. But no matter how far you stretch your thoughts, there's nothing to grab hold of. This is the boundary of human experience. We live trapped in time. Our minds are molded by memories, by what is happening now, by what we expect to come. Every story we've ever known begins somewhere. But what happens when you encounter a being who never began? Like every soul born into this world, you've been taught to measure life by the ticking of time, sunrises and sunsets, beginnings and ends. Yet God does not dwell within the system he created. There is no clock he obeys. He does not grow old. He does not change with the turning of the seasons. He exists beyond all of it, on the far side of existence itself. It was his invisible hand that set the stars in motion, that carved time from silence. He is not within time. He is the origin of it. Psalm 92 hints at this mystery. Before the mountains were born, before you brought forth the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting you are God. But what does it mean to exist before existence? Can you even imagine being before light, before matter, before the first flicker of creation? If you stood in that void, what would you see? What would you feel, or could you even exist at all? And that's where the truth strikes with awe beyond God. There is nothing. He is not part of time. He is the source of it. He was not born through time's flow. He spoke time into being. For centuries, philosophers have wrestled with this. They've called him the unmoved mover, the uncaused. Cause, the one who ignited everything without being shaped by anything. And still our words barely scratch the surface. Even the most advanced philosophies tremble before this mystery. No logic can hold it. So now I ask you a question, one that only your spirit can truly answer. How can a being bound by time fully understand the one who exists beyond it? Maybe the better question is this: how would your life change if you stopped trying to fit God into your timeline and instead let yourself be pulled into his eternity? Have you ever felt it, that subtle tug drawing you beyond the visible world? Something ancient, alive, and whispering deep within you. You came from more than time. You came from me. That voice is the beginning of awakening. The one who created time never followed it. He was before it. He always was. And surprisingly, even science often seen as faith's rival hints at this unfathomable truth. Albert Einstein, one of humanity's greatest minds, revealed that time isn't some cosmic backdrop or ticking clock. Time is a dimension, malleable, bendable, shaped by gravity and motion. Time is not separate from the universe. It is woven into its fabric alongside space and energy. So if God created the cosmos, then he also created time. And if that's true, he cannot be trapped within it. He stands above it. Let that sink in. God doesn't age. He doesn't wait. He doesn't move forward or backward. He simply is. When Moses asked for God's name, the answer didn't come in past or future tense. It wasn't "I was" or "I will be." It was "I am," eternal, unshaken, always present. Exodus 3:14. Today, even modern physicists and cosmologists are exploring the idea of dimensions beyond our own realms, where time doesn't behave the way we know it. In these higher dimensions, time might not move in a straight line. It could be circular, simultaneous, or something far beyond our ability to even imagine. And maybe that's where God is, or rather that's where he's always been. Then what if the God of the Bible, the one who created galaxies with a single word, is actually present in a reality that is significantly more expansive than our own? Because it is so enormous and so wonderful, our minds can hardly even begin to comprehend it. Imagine entering a location where time no longer holds you back. Is this something you could even fathom? Where are the past, the present, and the future all present at the same time? In the presence of the eternal, where are the prayers that you said many years ago that are still fresh in your mind? And now take into consideration this. If you believe that the God you worship is not constrained by the constraints of time, then wouldn't you think that he is already in your future, working out the issues that you are concerned about right now? Wouldn't you say that he is already working on the responses to the questions that you haven't even asked yet? If you ever find yourself wondering, where is God in all of this? Then you should consider this. Also, keep in mind that he is not simply ahead of you. He is greater than you. He is not running behind schedule. In no way is he early. In eternity, he is. And he is precisely at the same place that he has always been, ruling beyond the confines of time and also being intimately present in each and every beat of your life. Is it possible that the sole reason we have such a hard time comprehending him is because he is in a domain that is too sacred for our clocks to function properly? There are a lot of people who have attempted to comprehend the idea of eternity, but they have been unsuccessful. Perhaps this is due to the fact that we were never intended to fully comprehend it via the use of logic alone. Every moment of your life, from the moment you were born until the moment you passed away, has been molded by a beginning and an end. You are able to recall your earliest memories. You determine your age based on the number of years you have lived. You bemoan the passage of time while you count down the minutes until the events commence. It's the only thing you've ever known. Imagine for a second that you could step beyond of time, beyond the clock, beyond birth and death, beyond beginnings and endings, and see things from the perspective of God. This is simply a thought experiment. Where would you look for it? Even from that lofty vantage point, time, as we know, it would appear to be nothing more than a transient shadow, a momentary veil that conceals something that is much more significant. Is it possible that what we consider to be an eternity is in fact a fleeting instant for him? In 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 8, the Bible informs us that when we are with the Lord, a day is comparable to 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are comparable to a day. How can one possibly make sense of an entity that possesses all of history, the past, the present, and the future all at the same time? Take into consideration the question that a great number of doubters pose. If there is a God, then where did he originate from? But take a moment to reflect. If there was a beginning, if something or someone was responsible for the creation of God, then wouldn't that creator be more powerful? And if that were the case, wouldn't we have to refer to his being God instead? Because of this, we are thrown into a perilous cycle, a chain of causes that could never be broken. What is the point of stopping everything if everything originates from something else? At the minute that we assert that there was something that existed prior to God, we are no longer speaking of God. Rather, we are speaking of something quite different. A stopping point, a foundation that holds up the entire chain, and a first flame that lit the fire of life itself are all possibilities. But what if there does have to be a stopping point? This is not merely a religious concept. Rather, it is an essential intellectual requirement. Thomas Aquinas, a thinker from the Middle Ages, investigated this notion through a method that we now refer to as the cosmological argument. With his reasoning, he came to the conclusion that every effect must have a cause, and that every motion must have been produced by something else. But it is impossible to go backwards indefinitely. There must be a first cause, a cause that does not depend on anything else yet nonetheless gives rise to everything. This first cause is the uncaused cause that exists by its own nature. And the reason for this is God. It is not via wishful thinking or blind faith that we have arrived at this conclusion. To put it another way, it is the only rational way out of the impossible riddle of everlasting regression. So allow me to ask you this: have you ever experienced the conviction that there must be something more going on deep within you? Is there something that is unmovable, eternal, and not created by the hands of humans? If you were to find yourself in the very beginning of everything, before the planets began to spin, before the stars began to blaze, and before the lungs of any creature began to fill with air, what would you discover upon standing in that silence? Could you identify the voice that declares, "I am the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the last"? This is Revelation 22:13. Or would the realization that the one who has no beginning is the one who gave you a beginning cause your spirit to shake? There is one truth that resounds louder than all the others, and it does so from the very first breath of Scripture to the very last whisper in Revelation. He is not like any of us. Our walls do not hold him back. He is not constrained by them. When it comes to height, depth, or distance, he does not confine himself to any of these parameters. In John 4:24, the Bible makes the declaration that God is spirit. Assuming that God is spirit, it follows that he does not occupy space in the same manner that material things do. In order for him to be real, he does not require a throne to sit on or a temple that was constructed by human hands. He does not exist because there is room for him. Rather, he exists because he is the very essence of being. His uniqueness lies in the fact that he is unlike anything else you have ever experienced. A place to sit, a place to sleep, and a place to belong are all things that you require. However, God does not require location because he possesses every location within himself. There is not a single region of the universe that contains him. He is the core of all that exists. Therefore, when Moses, who was shaking nervously in front of the bush that was burning in the wilderness, asked the most audacious question a man could ask, "What is your name?" God's response consisted of words that will reverberate throughout eternity. "I am the person that I am." Exodus chapter 3, verse 14. To put it simply, I am not a name that is bound to time or a title that is fashioned by provenance. There is no need to provide an explanation for the name because it is the explanation. A name that conveys an incomprehensible range of qualities, including self-existence, power, presence, and glory. Imagine hearing those words not as a reader, but as Moses did by himself, barefoot on hallowed ground, encircled by the fire that did not go out. Can you even fathom what it would be like to hear those words in that very moment? What actions would you have taken? Perhaps you would have been brave enough to ask another question. If you have been in the presence of the eternal, does your soul have the ability to remain silent? What we are discussing here is the sacred secret that goes beyond language. Simply put, God is. Before him, there was not a single minute. The man was not born. There was no sign of him. He does not move around from one location to another. The location is in him. He is the creator of time itself. Hence, there is no such thing as a before. Since he is the one who fills everything, there is no place to go. The verses 7 through 8 of Psalm 139 are a lovely representation of this. How can I escape your spirit? Where can I go? In what direction can I get away from your presence? When I ascend to the sky, you will be there with me. You will be there if I make my bed in the depths of the forest. At this point, I would like to pose the question to you. If it is true that he is all about you and providing for you right now, then why do you sometimes feel as though you are such a distance away from him? Is it possible that the gap is not physical, but rather spiritual and emotional in nature? And here is a more profound idea that you should wrestle with. If God does not require a certain location in order to exist, then do you require a specific location in order to connect with him? Alternately, is he already closer than the next breath you take? There is a really uncomfortable and disquieting quality to any mystery. The human intellect, which is both brilliant and restricted, has a difficult time being calm in the face of the unknown. Explanations are needed by us. Patterns, timetables, meanings, and anything else that provides us with the assurance of certainty are the things that we seek out. We feel uneasy when we consider the possibility that there is anything that would exist outside the bounds of logic or reason. We were taught to inquire, to evaluate, and to find solutions. What happens, however, when the enigma we are confronted with is not a conundrum that needs to be solved, but rather a presence that needs to be gave up? The beginning of genuine faith is not at the point where solutions are found, but rather at the point where awe is reached. In Hebrews chapter 11, verse 11, we are reminded that faith is the substance of things that are hoped for and the proof of things that are not seen. Belief is not a map that provides a clearly defined path. It is the bravery to continue walking even when the path does not appear to be visible beneath the clouds. Even when the questions are more loud than the solutions, it is the willingness to trust that is the most important thing. Have you ever found yourself trying to make sense of something that simply wouldn't fit into your logic while you were laying awake at night looking for an explanation? There was a brief moment of loss, one that has been postponed, the absence of a sign from God while you were expecting one. Nevertheless, in that void of ignorance, there is frequently the stirring of something sacred, a sound that was not one of explanation, but rather one of invitation. Is it possible that we have been asking the wrong question the entire time? What would happen if we had the courage to ask, "Where is He leading me?" rather than spending an infinite amount of time attempting to figure out where God came from a mystery that is so profound that even infinity falls down before it? What if that is all that is being sought after? Imagine that God summoned Abraham to abandon everything that was familiar to him and to move toward a land that he had never seen before. There was no map provided to him. There was a promise made to him. Moreover, he had faith. If God spoke to your spirit and said, "Go, and I will show you," would you be able to complete the same task? The ability to follow without completely comprehending something requires a heavenly level of strength in a world that is hooked to knowing. But it's possible, even if it's just a possibility. That's where the most profound relationship with God is born. Trust rather than control is the key. It is not in clarity, but rather in proximity. Permit me to pose this question to you, not as a test of your mettle, but rather as a little nudge to your spirit. Have you reached a point where you are willing to let go of the urge to comprehend everything in order to be guided by the individual who comprehends everything? Maybe the question that has to be asked is not about the genesis of God, but rather about your own destiny. The only thing that existed before the first Adam shuddered into existence was God. Before light broke through the darkness, before angels raised their voices, and before the first Adam was created. We were not floating in space because space had not yet been created by the power of speech. It is not surrounded by silence because even silence requires a contrast to be present. There was only Him present. The individual is flawless, limitless, and self-sufficient. Is it possible for you to see that moment not as a bystander, but as if your spirit were hanging near the edge of that timeless stillness? The eternal presence of the one who was never born and who never began is the only thing that exists. There are no galaxies, no earth, no language, no when or where. On the other hand, this is where the mystery that is beyond our comprehension lies. What was God doing if He was by Himself before the creation of the world? What was going through His mind before He allowed the first thing to begin? In the Bible, there are hints that provide a look into this incomprehensible question. The words, "You love me before the foundation of the world," are spoken by Jesus to the Father in John 17:24 through the book of John. Love existed even before the universe was composed of its constituent parts. Not a love that is inert, but rather a divine relationship that is active between the Holy Spirit, the Father, and the Son. Three individuals who are totally connected, a single essence. Consequently, before to the creation of anything, God did not experience, boredom lacked anything, and did not require praise or friendship. His existence was filled with unending happiness, unending love, and wonderful harmony. Creation did not originate from a state of isolation. It was a result of an abundance. As a result of the boundless generosity of a God who chose to share His glory, not because He was compelled to do so, but because love always gives. Had you ever considered whether or not you would still choose to create beings that had the ability to turn away from you if you were already complete and if you had nothing missing? Does the formation of stars and soil still occur, having the knowledge that one day a cross would be raised on that very territory? God's heart has revealed that there was a purpose in existence prior to the creation of the universe. A strategy was in place. At the very beginning of the world, there was already a lamb that had been slaughtered. The 13th chapter of Revelation. This indicates that salvation was already written before you came into existence, before humanity fell, and before the snake murmured their words. Would you be able to feel the gravity of that truth? What type of God would write salvation into the story before the very first sin was ever committed? Which sort of love is capable of preparing mercy before there is even a need for justice? This does not have a typical beginning. No, this is neither a myth or a legend that was created by the mind of humans. In comparison to all other realities, this is a holy reality, one that is not constrained by time or reasoning, but rather is drenched in the purpose of eternity. If you ever find yourself wondering who was God before the creation of the world, what type of heart would chose to produce you? Perhaps that is the true question that needs to be asked, aware of the amount that it would cost. Moreover, the more profound question has resurfaced. Given that God is eternal and that His love is eternal, what portion of that eternity was intended for you to be a part of? The enigma that is the origin of God has been a source of fascination for not only believers, but also philosophers, mystics, and scientists throughout the course of human history. Many people have proposed audacious hypotheses because they are unable to comprehend the concept of a being that has no genesis. Attempts made by humans to comprehend something that may never be completely comprehended. The idea that God is a product of the universe itself is represented by one of these theories. It is possible that He sprang from a more advanced form of cosmic intelligence, or that He is the consciousness of the cosmos, gradually growing into its most advanced form. There are many who compare Him to an energy field which is timeless and impersonal, and which is present in everything, but is not a personal being. But if that were the case, how would we explain the God of the Bible, who is a God who talks, who loves, who chooses, and who calls you by your name? The idea that God is a part of an unending cycle has been offered by several people, that it's possible that there was a God before Him, and after that, there was another God. As if a torch were to be passed down through time, an unending line of divine beings would be passing down creation. On the other hand, this brings us back to a perplexing question. If there is no first, then who was the one who started the fire? Many people, including Thomas Aquinas, have posed the question, is it possible for there to be a series that does not have a source? A more audacious explanation proposes that God is an advanced being from another dimension, so far beyond us in intelligence and power that we confused Him for divine. This theory is more bold than the previous one. Is it possible that God is a visitor from a higher world that we are unable to perceive? However, even in that case, such entity would still require being created. Because if He is created, then He is not God. Therefore, He is not eternal if He has evolved. As a result, the circle goes back to its starting point. It is possible that all of these notions, regardless of how imaginative they may be, are indications of something more profound. That the human race has always had the feeling that there is more. The fact that we are drawn to the border of comprehension is not because we are able to comprehend it, but rather because something old is urging us to recall who it was that created us. The Bible does not provide a timeline of when God first came into being. In contrast, it starts with God in the beginning, as stated in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. There is no explanation, no history of origin. Simply put, the unshakable fact that He had already arrived at the location. That could very well be the most compelling evidence of all. Because even if we were able to pinpoint the origin of God, would He still be God? What if we were able to define Him according to scientific principles or fit Him into human theory? Wouldn't that make Him less significant than we are? The question is now transferred to you to answer. Which one is more difficult to believe, that there was a beginning for God, or that He is the starter of everything? Is it possible that our most profound desire to explain the genesis of God is also a plea to comprehend our own? And if you were to put your search for God's origins on hold for a moment, would you finally start to hear where He is asking you to go? What would be the point of creating anything at all if God did not have a beginning, if he lived in perfect eternity, if he was without any deficiencies or requirements? What is the purpose of dictating time? For what reason would one want to mold the fabric of space and disperse stars across a sky that did not yet exist? Why do form beings have such a high propensity for rebellion, and why are they so similar to us? Because of this paradox, even the most astute minds are rendered speechless. Someone who was flawless in love and glory, who was complete in themselves, made the decision to create something that was not themselves. Some item that is transient, limited, and susceptible. On the other hand, it's possible that reasoning isn't the answer. It can be discovered through love. God is love according to the Bible, which informs us in 1 John 4:8. This is not simply the fact that he possesses love. Rather, he is love in his very core. And the nature of genuine love is such that it cannot be contained. The desire to pour out, to share, and to give is strong. Could it be that the flow of love that lasts forever is what gives rise to creation? Is it possible that God, who possesses an endless beauty in communion within himself, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, wished to transmit that delight beyond himself for the reason that he desired us rather than because he required us? Just for a second, try to picture yourself living a life that is so full of happiness and power that you make the decision to compose a symphony. No, not for yourself, but so that other people can listen to it, dance to it, and discover that it has the power to transform them. Therefore, creation is what it is. There is a cosmic symphony in which every star sings, every ocean breathes, and every soul carries the echo of its composer. In the beginning, God did not create time. It was made specifically for us, a structure that will guide our being, a setting in which love, atonement, and the development of relationships can take place. God was not intended to be housed in space. The story that he would continue to write into galaxies, into Earth, into hearts, and into humanity was intended to be contained within it. Neither an experiment nor an afterthought led to the creation of us. Intimacy is what you were designed for. For the purpose of knowing him, walking with him, and bearing his likeness, God made you. This is professed in Genesis 1:27 with a clarity that is just astounding. God made man in his own image, so the Bible says. That distinction was presented to no other living thing. The imprint of the eternal is something that can only be found within your own spirit. However, here is the more profound question. Why would God continue to make it if he knew what would happen, that his creation would rebel, that love would be rejected, and that the cross would be required? That is the price that must be paid for genuine love. Love is not love if it is compelled to exist. Something that is divine is love that is chosen even after suffering and even after being betrayed. The question is, why did the one who had no beginning generate time-space in individuals such as yourself? In spite of the fact that he had seen the conclusion from the beginning, he continued to say yes. Even after seeing you tumble, he continued to shape you. Even though he witnessed your struggle, he continued to inhale life into your lungs. In spite of the fact that he witnessed your wandering, he placed eternity in your heart. Now, perhaps the question that needs to be asked is not why God created, but rather what you want to accomplish with the life that he has given you. Are you going to live your life as if you were a product of time, or as someone who was made by the eternal? In the first place, God had already written a plan long before the skies were spread out like a canvas, before a single grain of earth had been formed, and before there was such a thing as morning or evening. He had already written the blueprint, a strategy that didn't originate from a need, but rather from affection. Rather than being reactive, it is intent. Rather of being ambiguous, it is incredibly specific. Have you ever pondered the thoughts that were going through God's mind prior to the words, "Let there be light," being spoken? When did time first start to tick? When did Eden begin to bloom? And when did angels even begin to take flight? That which is revealed in Ephesians 1:4 is quite astounding. Because he chose us in him before the world was even created, so that we may be holy and blameless before him in love at the time of his choosing us. Did you manage to get that? It was before the beginning of the world, before the stars, before the sun, and before sin that you were selected. Therefore, it is not enough to say that God planned creation. He also planned you. Nevertheless, what kind of a plan was this? Was it only the act of existing, of surviving, or was it something more profound? Something that cannot be changed. Before the beginning of the world, God had already envisioned a family, a people who were not formed of stone or machine, but of spirit and volition, who were capable of love, obedience, and walking in relationship with their Creator. There was no passing thought given to humanity. It was not a late addition to the heavenly story that you were a part of. You were the focal point, the bearing of the image, the one for whom the garden would be planted, and the one through whom the glory of God would be mirrored into creation. What is even more astonishing is the following. Prior to the beginning of creation, salvation did as well. Jesus is referred to as the Lamb that was slaughtered from the beginning of the world in Revelation 13:8. Consequently, this indicates that God had already planned the sacrifice prior to the introduction of sin. In the past, before the failure of people, God expressed kindness. Prior to the moment that Adam and Eve breathed their first breath, Christ had already made the decision to give up his. That is done by who? What type of love is it that forgives first things that haven't even been done yet? This is not a typical plan at all. A love story that was scripted in eternity, woven into time and realized on a cross that would stand at the center of history is what we are talking about here. Therefore, the question is now different. Considering that God designed you before the universe was created and that He called you by name before the stars had names, what does it say about the value of your existence? In addition, if His plan from the beginning encompassed not just your creation, but also your redemption, your calling, and your eternal place beside Him, then what aspect of that plan are you currently putting into action? Are you walking as someone who was selected before the earth was even brought into being, or are you walking as someone who has forgotten where you came from? Possibly now is the moment to remember. God knew you better than anyone else in the world. Even before you breathed your first breath, He had already accomplished the same thing. Even before you went looking for Him, He was already incorporating your name into the narrative that will live on forever. So who was God before the formation of the universe? Because He was everything, He had no requirements. Before there was anyone else with whom to love, He was love. It was He who was the beginning before there were any beginnings. Even before the first page of time turned, He had already begun writing your story. And this truth continues to exist even now despite the existence of all theories and philosophies. Simply put, God is, forever and ever, existing on its own, always the same. It is comparable to searching for the edge of the sky when one attempts to trace the origin of God. You are not able to arrive at it. It is only in astonishment that you grow. The true invitation is not to fully comprehend Him, but rather to become acquainted with Him. Having the ability to be in awe of a creature that is both so huge and so personal that He thought of you long before the stars were born is quite remarkable. If He had designed you before the beginning of time, then your life is not a chance occurrence. We are not wasting your suffering. The journey you took will not be forgotten. You are living proof that the greatest works of God are frequently the most obscure. This is especially true in a culture that is concerned with timelines, labels, and explanations. Allow this to serve as motivation for you. You did not come into being by chance. You were created by the Eternal One, selected before the world was even conceived, summoned into a plan that predates the planets, and intended for something that is far more significant than what you can see in the present moment. There is a God who exists beyond time, and you are surrounded by the wisdom of that God in every moment of your life, however walks alongside you in it. On the other hand, the question is not simply, where did God come from? Where exactly is He going to take you? If you felt something stir inside of you as a result of this message, do not let it end here. Please leave a comment below and tell us which aspect of this reality had the most significant influence on you. Click the 1 in 11 button if you have faith that God knew you before the earth was created. In the event that you found this to be profound, you may assist in the dissemination of the message by enjoying this video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing it with someone who needs to be reminded of their eternal worth. Additionally, if you feel compelled to demonstrate your support for this project by way of super thanks, please know that your generosity is greatly appreciated. But the most important thing is that you are present here. As you move on in life, may you do so with confidence, knowing that the one who holds all time already embraces you. And now, as we contemplate the eternal character of God and the fact that He knew us from the beginning of time, let us bring our hearts to a place of silence and come before him in prayer, inviting the one who has no beginning to speak into this present instant. Allow us to pray. You, the eternal God who was before time and space, who existed before the first dawn, before the stars danced in the endless abyss, before matter itself existed. You are the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, yet you do not have a beginning and you do not have an end to yourself. Due to the fact that you are what exists in the incomprehensible void, where there was neither light nor darkness, and when the idea of what came before had not yet been created, you were already present from the beginning. You who did not originate from anything more significant, because there is nothing more significant than you are the ones who were not formed. You are the causeless cause, the unmoving mover that provides meaning to everything that is in existence by your presence. The human mind makes an effort to comprehend you. It is their goal to find an explanation for the incomprehensible. How then is it possible for the creature to comprehend its creator? Is it possible for dust to contemplate the hand that molded it? You are the very essence of reality, the very essence of ultimate existence. If the universe had a beginning, then you existed before it. While time stretches like a line, you hover above it, able to see it all at once. Past, present, and future bow before you wrap together in the eternal now. Since the dawn of time, humanity has asked the same question: where did God come from? But even that question is shaped by our limitations. To speak of origins is to shrink your greatness to something our minds can measure. Our grasp of eternity is painfully small. We cannot comprehend a being who simply is. And yet deep down we know this: if you were not, nothing would be. You are the source of all life, the first spark of every light, the unshakable foundation of all creation. The heavens cry out your glory, O God, unchanging through the ages. Everything that exists bears your fingerprints. And though our minds cannot contain the infinite, our hearts still reach out for you. Time rules over us, but you rule over time. We pray to the one who stands beyond the ticking clock. You have not changed. Not then, not now, not ever. Let our doubts not drive us away, but lead us into deeper wonder, into trust. May our inability to comprehend not divide us from you, but draw us nearer in awe and surrender. For the one who built the cosmos with a word, or perhaps just a whisper, can reveal truths that no logic can hold. You have always been. You are still God. Thank you.